Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a seriously massive transformation, and that is how to go from absolutely zero savings to becoming a true asset owner. I'm going to be walking you through this from the perspective of an experienced, self-made entrepreneur who started with, well, absolutely nothing. No fancy qualifications, zero financial safety net. Look, when you're just starting out, it really feels like your job owns you, right? But today, we're going to outline the exact step-by-step strategy to flip that script completely so you can actually start owning assets that work for you. Let's dive right in. Okay, so here's our roadmap for the explainer today. First, the mindset of an asset owner. Second, how to fuel your growth engine. Third, building your stability net. Fourth, crushing those vanity traps. Fifth, funding shared experiences. And finally, number 6, the complete beginner's action plan.
All right, part 1, the mindset of an asset owner. So before we even talk about moving a single dollar around, we really have to rewire how you view your income. There's just the stark contrast we need to understand. An employee works for a salary, and that money, it pretty much just pays for immediate basic survival. Food, shelter, water. You get paid, you spend it to live, and then you just wait for that next paycheck. But an asset owner, they use their money to buy things that actually increase in value over time. Think about it. The richest people out there are entrepreneurs, investors, creators, people who own things. If you don't own something that grows in value, you are essentially what is owned by the system. Crazy to think about, right? To break out of that exhausting cycle, we're going to use the 25-15-50-10 rule. I've personally used this exact framework for decades. It is literally the ultimate formula designed to help anyone, no matter what your income is right now, manage their money like the top 1%. Here's the breakdown. We allocate 25% to growth, 15% to stability, 50% to essentials, and a final 10% to rewards. Moving on to part 2, fuel your growth engine. Okay, so this is the 25% that acts as your wealth-building engine. The very second you get paid, a quarter of your income needs to go straight into assets that work for you. Let me put this into perspective with a quick story. Let's compare Billy, who starts at age 20 investing just $200 a month, to Phil. Now Phil waits until he's 30, but he tries to catch up by investing $300 a month. By age 60, Phil has put in $108,000 out of his own pocket, while Billy only put in $96,000. But get this, the final outcomes are absolutely staggering. Phil ends up with about $678,000, while Billy has an incredible $1.26 million. Billy invested less of his own cash, but he made nearly $600,000 more simply because he started early. That, my friends, is the absolute magic of compound growth.
But look, you have to put that money in the right place. It's absolutely crucial that you open tax-advantaged accounts early on. If you're in the UK, you want to be looking at a stocks and shares ISA. Over in the US, the Roth IRA is legendary, honestly. It grows completely tax-free and you pull it out tax-free at retirement. Also, if your employer offers it, take advantage of a 401k or workplace pension match. That is literally free money on the table. Do not let your growth engine get bogged down by unnecessary taxes. So once the account is open, what do you actually buy? Well, for a complete beginner, here are the 3 foundational assets you need for a super simple, diversified, set-it-and-forget-it portfolio. First, a U.S. stock index fund like the S&P 500, so you own a tiny slice of the biggest American companies. Second, an international stock index fund, which lets you capture global growth. And third, a bond fund. This acts kind of like lending money to the government, and it provides some much-needed stability. You do not need to sit there trying to pick individual winning stocks, you just buy the whole market. Now, you can kind of tweak this mix depending on your age and how much risk you can stomach. An aggressive portfolio that's heavily weighted in stocks, say around 90%, well, that can grow a lot faster, but you're going to face some pretty sharp ups and downs in the short term. It's a bumpy ride. A more moderate portfolio with more bonds might smooth out that short-term market volatility, but it's probably going to yield slightly lower long-term returns. As a general rule of thumb, the younger you are, the more aggressive you can afford to be. Which brings us to part 3. Build your stability net. Man, I learned about this 15% bucket the hard way as a young entrepreneur. I spent all my available cash on this used VW Golf, and literally 3 months later, boom, the engine blew up. I had zero safety net, none. It forced me to borrow money, piling on debt, and a massive amount of stress, setting me back a full year. Look, most people don't actually have an income problem, they have a stability problem. One unexpected bill just ruins the whole shebang. That is exactly why you need a high-yield savings account, or HYSA. This is a zero-risk bank account offering higher interest, but it allows you to easily access your emergency funds within 24 hours. Hear me on this. You must never, ever gamble your stability funds in the stock market or crypto. When emergencies hit, the markets might be way down, and you need speed and zero risk.
So you might be wondering, why not just use a normal checking account for this? Well, because you should be targeting a 4 to 5% interest rate on that high yield savings account. If your emergency money is just sitting in an account earning zero, inflation is quietly in the background eating it all away. You need it somewhere that earns at least a little bit while it waits, completely risk-free.
All right, part 4, crush the vanity traps.
It's genuinely staggering how many young professionals out there earning over $100,000 a year are still living paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because they fall right into the dangerous trap of lifestyle creep. We absolutely must clearly separate genuine needs from vanity traps. Essentials are what keep you alive and functioning, right? Basic rent, essential groceries, a reliable used car. Vanity traps are those least status cars you get just to look successful, the fancy designer clothes, and that massive stack of streaming subscriptions you never even use. Remember, wealth isn't what you see, it's what you don't see. Your essentials should never, ever exceed 50% of your income.
To keep that 50% in check, you need strict rules, not just willpower. Willpower fades. Here is the highly effective 7-day rule to kill impulse buys. First, just pause for 7 days before buying the thing. Second, after a week, reevaluate if you still even care about it. Often, that initial dopamine hit has completely passed. Third, ask yourself if you're paying for the marketing brand or the actual value of the item. And finally, ask if it truly improves your life. This simple little system stops clever marketing dead in its tracks.
Part 5. Fund shared experiences. Okay, you might be a little surprised to hear a self-made entrepreneur telling you to go out and spend money on fun. But trust me, this is a very intentional strategy. Pure discipline without any joy, it just feels like a punishment, and honestly, it usually leads to financial binging later on. But you have to be strategic about it. Prioritize shared experiences over material junk. Use your 10% joy jar for vacations to prevent burnout. Seriously, I actually ended up with stress-induced shingles once because I worked way too hard without a single break. Spend it on hobbies to stay passionate, nights out to maintain your friendships, and meaningful gifts to build real connection. Experiences are what sustain your long-term motivation to keep building wealth.
And finally, part 6, the beginner's action plan. So how does a complete beginner with zero savings actually execute all of this? We bring it all together into a simple, automated monthly routine. The exact day your paycheck lands in your checking account, you execute what I call the paycheck sweep. On that very same day, automated bank transfers instantly move 25% to your growth account and 15% to your stability HYSA. You never even see the money. For the rest of the month, you live strictly off the 50% left for essentials and the 10% for your joy jar. Setting it up like this makes wealth building completely hands-off. To support that automated system, I've got a daily and immediate habits checklist for you. You can take action on this today. Call your landlord and try to renegotiate your rent, or maybe look into house hacking. Go through your bank statements tonight and cancel every single unused subscription. Vow right now to buy used, reliable vehicles instead of bleeding your cash dry on a lease. Enforce that 7-day rule on literally every purchase over $20. And go ahead and download a Roundup app to automatically sweep your spare change into your stability fund. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, really important question to think about. Are you building assets that work for you in the background, or are you trapped in this cycle, just working tirelessly to buy things you don't actually need? The 25-15-15-10 rule is your blueprint out of that trap. Implement those automated transfers, shift your mindset, and start owning your future today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.